Hey, hey, hey.
What's up, Dr. Tiff? How are you?
I'm doing well, Coach Val. How are you?
I'm doing good over here.
Welcome back, everybody, joining us to another Tuesday Talks, our favorite day of the week. Last week, if you did not catch our part one of Letting Kids Fail, you are definitely going to want to go back and take a listen. Carve out 30 minutes, listen to it in the car, listen to it at lunch, on your walk, whatever. But you're definitely going to want to go back and check it out because we are going to expand on some of the things that we talked about last week. So go ahead and share this episode with a friend right now. Copy the link, send it in a text message, tell them to come on over and hear what we're going to talk about tonight because we discussed a really good topic last week, letting kids fail, and share some of our own ways that we deal with that with our kids. Share some of the ways you deal with that in school, when you're in the classroom as a teacher. And I think one of the big takeaways for me was just remembering that when we say let kids fail, we aren't saying it in reference to things that could harm them or hurt them. We're just saying let them feel the weight of any consequences associated with choices that they make. What was something that stood out to you, Val, from last week?
I loved how we talked about when you're in the process of letting kids fail, that it's okay to do it based on what's comfortable for you as the parent or as the teacher. Because what we don't want is for you to put your kid in a stressful situation and then you are stressed out about the situation and then it becomes one of those experiences that are traumatizing versus a learning experience. So do what you can handle, but we said start with the little things. So, it doesn't have to be something major, but just something small. You should go back and check it out because Tiffany and I both gave small examples that we've done as parents with our kids. And both of us, we were on different sides or different parts of that spectrum as well for how far we let it go.
Yeah, and art, life imitated art for me last week because we did our Tuesday talk, and on Wednesday, we get to school, and my son has forgotten his lunchbox at school. And I said, well, I'll be darned. We just talked about this last night on Tuesday Talk, and here I am. It's time to put up or shut up, right? Like, am I going to decide what to do based on the great things that we talked about in our episode, or I'm going to stray away? And so I thought about a couple of things. First, his reaction when he got out the car and realized that had left his lunch at school was one of sadness and regret. So I saw the emotion. It wasn't just like, oh well, I know my mom will bring me something to eat. It was like, oh no, I'm not gonna have any food. I'm not gonna have any snacks to eat. What am I gonna eat? So I thought about his reaction, and then I also thought about his past. Has he developed a habit of forgetting his lunch, where he just haphazardly leaves the house, not really worried about it, because I'm gonna step in and fill the gap and bring him food? And the answer to that was no. He probably has left his lunch maybe once before. For those who are new to listening to us, my son goes to a small private school. There's no cafeteria. That was the third thing I thought about. Where would he get food? There's no cafeteria. There's no vending machine. You eat what you bring, or you don't eat. So I thought about those three things, and I decided that I would get him lunch. I didn't tell him that in the moment. I just said, well, let's just see how this works out. And he hung his head low and walked into school. So I had a talk with his teacher, and I was like, hey, he left his lunch. I'm texting the teacher. He left his lunch. I'm going to have to figure something out. And the teacher said, well, I can go get him Chick-fil-A right before lunch. And I said, oh, no, 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 because my kid loves Chick-fil-A. So that would be a reward of sorts, right? Like, I forgot my lunch and I got Chick-fil-A. That's a no. So I think the teacher had said, no, thank you. So I found a spot that had burgers. he's, burgers are something he'll eat, but not like, oh, yes, I get to eat a burger. So I decided to get him a burger, a fruit cup, some chips, and I took it to him to school. He was elated when I walked through the door to the classroom with food. And so I felt in that moment, it wasn't to punish him to not bring him lunch because he was remorseful. He doesn't have a history of doing this over and over again, not really caring about it. And I felt like I gave him sustenance, but not in the form of a reward like Chick-fil-A chicken nuggets. So I felt like I did a good job. I patted myself on the back, but I really was kind of struck by how we had just talked about it the night before. And then boom, I was faced with the situation of, okay, do I let him feel the weight of his consequences? Because otherwise he just wouldn't have eaten all day. And so that was a choice that I made. Maybe for your kid, if you're listening, you would have made a different choice. We don't have to compare. We don't have to all do the same thing. But I did want to just share the process of my thoughts to help you maybe reflect on those same thoughts in that process if it happens to your kid next time. So I like to share that. If anything happened to you, I feel like after we talk about these things,
I mean, does it not just come up in real life? Like, and especially because like we have previous stories before we do the episode, but I guess it's one of those things once it becomes in the forefront of your mind and you're aware of it, like you just see it everywhere. So yes, did have a situation with my youngest son and his water bottle. Please go check out that last episode. Watch them back to back. So we're in the car and we've had like a full day. They've been to school. We had stuff to do right after school. So we have not been home since we left from the morning. And he's in the back seat and he's like, Mom, my water bottle is not completely full. I'm like, kid, what are you talking about? Okay. And he's like, so can I have some of yours? And I was, where's your water bottle? I thought, didn't you just say it was completely full? Well, it's, what is it? Spit it out, kid. Like, it's been a whole day. I'm ready to get to the house. It's not completely full, but so you still got water. Well, it's empty. What are you talking? Is it empty or is it not completely full? Because those are two different things. Like one of them, your problem is not a problem. Okay. And the other one, I'm going to tell you how your problem is still not a problem. So anyway, you guys, I realized that he has a habit of using implicit communication. The way that he communicates, he wants to imply things that he needs versus explicitly just saying what it is he needs or just going ahead and asking for what he wants. And I'm trying to get him to understand that the way he communicates is not bad, but in certain situations, he needs to go ahead and say what needs to be said and not beat around the bush. And so finally I was like, he said, it's empty. I have my water bottle, but it's empty. And I said, well, okay, great. Now that we know what the deal is, let me just tell you, we'll be home in about 5 minutes and there's plenty of water at the house. And he was like, but Mom, nope. You've already had this conversation about these water bottles and my water that I've thought and pre-planned ahead for. I'm gonna need y'all to start doing that. And so, and literally like 5 minutes later, we pulled up by the time we got done with the conversation, we had pulled up at the house. And then I was like, oh, it doesn't matter anymore. We're at the house. Go on in and get you some water.
I love it. It's so important to know your kids too. Like he was wanting to tell you I don't have it, but instead he is, like you mentioned, using that implicit communication, that implied meaning of, well, right now I can't access mine, so can I have some of yours? Whether it's not fully full or it's empty, then at least it's not even here. So I think it's super important.
It has warmed up. It's not cold anymore. Girl, I hear it all.
all the things. So I think it's super important to know your kid. And that was part of my process too with the whole lunch issue was I had to think about, okay, is this a kid that just, like I said, just leaves his lunch and doesn't really care because he knows I'm going to swoop in and save the day or not? So process that the next time your kid faces that type of situation. It could be schoolwork related. It could be leaving a project at home and it's due that same day. Do you go back home to get it? Do you let them just deal with the consequences? Think about what their reaction is to it, how they feel about having left whatever they forgot. Also, what's their habit? Is this a habit for them? And then think about whether or not you want to save the day or you don't. But we also looked at an article that talked about some myths that are out there. And I think as parents, we're all just trying to do the best we can with what we know and learning on the fly. I've learned that, all of us. The parent that makes the sandwiches into shapes of animals to the parent who, is picking up Lunchables and throwing them in a paper bag. Like, whatever the range is. We're all just doing the very best that we can, but it's not easy. I know for me, it's not easy to let my son be less than his best. I won't use the word perfect, but less than his best, less than my best. Like I have a standard for myself, I have a standard for him. And so there are some things that I feel like I start to believe about my parenting that aren't true. And this article kind of brought some of those to light. The first one it mentioned was that you have complete control over your child's development. And if you don't, you're doing something wrong. That hit home to me. What is it striking you, Val?
It's one of those things. So over the past few years, I've been doing some personal development. And one of the things that has constantly struck me is this idea of separating our person from our performance. And for most of us, especially millennials, if you, when you were in school, like you were that kid that did your absolute best, you were straight A's, or your best was, almost straight A's, but you always strived like to be an achiever and be successful. A lot of people that did that, if you were in the gifted program during that time, like you develop this sense of who I am as a person is attached to how successful I seem or my achievements that I have. And when we become parents, our kids, and society has a lot to do with this, but our kids become another one of those achievements, those plaques or those trophies. Like when people look at your kids, they make assumptions about you and your parenting. It's just the way it is. And so it's almost second nature to be like, oh my God, my kid failed. For me, oh my God, if my kid fails math and I'm the math coach, like, how does that make me look? You know what I mean? So yeah, that hits home with me.
Definitely. I'm guilty of that as well. What you just said, like the way your kid presents to the world is a reflection on you. I wholeheartedly believe that. I've told my son before, like, when we go out of the house, I want you to look like somebody loves you. I don't want you to be ashy. I don't want your hair looking crazy. I don't want stains on your clothes, holes in your pants. Look like a reflection of the amount of love that you receive at home. So I say that a lot to him, and I think it goes beyond just the physical appearance. It also goes to the academics, to his character, the way he treats his friends, the amount of respect he gives his teachers. But it is a myth, and I think that once we can grasp onto the fact, like I said, we are in this parenting role learning as we go. It's a skill to be studied and learned. So you mentioned doing your own personal development and carrying over what you learned there into your parenting style. And so just hearing that kind of gives me the freedom to one, make a mistake, to screw up a little bit, to say the wrong thing and maybe apologize, to have the wrong action and apologize. And so learning as I go and making sure that I'm not imposing all of my standards onto this human being who is developing their own standards for themselves. There are definitely boundaries to that for me. So you can't come out the house looking like who shot John. Like you just cannot. You can't come out the house with holes in your clothes and, you just ashy all over the place. That's a standard for me. That's not going anywhere.
That is important to you, Dr. Tiff. Listen.
That's not gonna happen.
Like, just to not get it misconstrued with anybody. Like, what she's not saying is any child who looks like that in public, that means they are unloved and unkept and all of those things. She clearly said this is a standard for her and her child, her family. And so each of us as parents and as teachers, like, we have to know what our standards are. We also have to understand, like she said, if there is a mistake that happens somewhere along the way, or if something happens that we didn't anticipate or we don't necessarily like. Sometimes it means it was a mistake. Sometimes we as the adult need to apologize. Sometimes it wasn't a mistake, really. It was just, oh, well, that's not the way I wanted things to end up. So I need to do something different next time. Not necessarily wrong, because it might be the right thing for someone else and their child, for example. So yeah, it's how do I feel about me outside of any and everything else that's going on, whether I've had successes or failures. That is completely separate from what those successes and failures are. If I succeed, great. I'm who I am. If I fail, it's still great. It's an opportunity to learn, but I'm still who I am, and that doesn't change that.
Yeah. And so that failure that kind of we allow to happen for our kids in regards to their development, it helps them to grow. So there are times when I just back off a little bit. Okay, that's the choice you want to make. Got it. Whether that's in school, with his schoolwork, with the way he presents himself to the world, with the way that he interacts with his friends and peers, and you let that situation give the feedback. And I know for myself, if I reflect over my childhood, that happened to me. It's like my parents got to the point where they were like, okay, I done told you enough. So now I'm not going to tell you anymore. And somebody else corrected me, chastised me, critiqued me, and that stuck with me. And it created a change in my behavior, in my approach to things. So I do feel like we can be hands off in these instances and allow just natural development to run its course and be the teacher in that situation. One of the other myths in this article was you can never do enough or be enough as a parent. And I think that resonates from some insecurities. What do you think about that one, Val?
Yeah, I know part of my struggle is like imposter syndrome. Am I doing enough? I guess part of my grace is that people do tend to see me as a good parent. And so there are moments when I question that about myself. Like, am I really doing, enough of what needs to be done for my kids? Like, am I really a good parent? Those questions come up in my mind more often than some people probably would think. And so navigating that, it's like, I want to be there for everything. I really do. I want to make sure everything is the way that it's supposed to be. Like, I want to make sure that my kids grow up healthy and strong, have a good mindset, like all of those things. And so I know that happens on a daily basis. And sometimes when we get home in the evening, I just want to go take a nap. and I don't put much intention on those things. So yeah, I think this could resonate with a lot of parents.
Yeah, I think so too. Because when you have that thought that you can never do enough, you can never be enough as a parent, it does push you to make sure, okay, I need to be there for everything. I need to be helping with everything. I need to remind my kid about everything. I need to rescue them from everything because you're trying to prove yourself as enough. And if I do all of these things, then I will prove that I'm enough. In that action, in that train of thought, you are probably preventing your child from failing and learning from the mistakes because you're there to catch everything before the consequence happens, to intercede before the consequence is felt. You're there for every little thing. And that is, I think, detrimental to the child because you're not allowing them to learn from just natural development. And when you think about where that's rooted from, where it originates, is from your own insecurity as a parent. So we have to do a self check. Why do I feel like I always need to be reminding my kid about this? Why do I feel like I need to be present for every single thing that happens? Why do I feel like I need to rescue this kid from every choice that they're making? Is it because I feel like my child just isn't capable of making those decisions? Or is it because I'm trying to prove that I'm a great parent and I want everybody else to see how great of a parent that I am? So, really, just doing some self reflection, I think, can help you determine which lane you're in. And if you feel like your child isn't capable of making good decisions, good choices, that's a conversation you need to have with your kid. And if you feel like you are trying to compensate for an insecurity, then that's a conversation you have with yourself through journaling, self help books, parenting books, just talking with another friend. You'd be surprised when you talk to other moms and you just open up and you're not this polished parent that we're all on the same struggle bus.
The same one. Okay.
Just trying to make it day to day and produce a good human that contributes to society. That's
Right.
it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I would also add to that, when in reflection, because this happened to me, I was also considering how my parents were when I was growing up and the things that I thought they were great at, or the compliments that they would get about us being their kids. And so, like, trying to live up to that standard that I felt like my parents had set when they raised me. And so now I'm trying to do those same things with my kid, and my kids are not me. I'm not my parents. And it could also work the other way. Like, maybe you felt like your parents were horrible parents. And so you're trying to, like, overachieve being way better parents than they are. So, yeah, I like what you said, journaling, and definitely talk to other parents, and, be open and transparent. And you'll find out that you are not by yourself.
Not at all. One of the third myths in the article was that your child's success or failure defines you. So if my child fails, then that defines who I am. And it should not be that way. It is not that way. I think that we have to really think about what we consider tangible evidence of our parenting success. It does make me feel all warm and fuzzy inside when somebody's like, oh my gosh, your son is so fill in the blank, whatever positive attribute. I'm like, that's my kid. And conversely, when somebody's like, I was thinking about your son, and they fill in the blank with something negative, I'm like, oh, is that my kid? That's not the kid I raised. That's not the kid. You start to get defensive, whether it's to yourself or to the person that's talking to you. And so I feel like we have to really switch off that thought in our mind that that umbilical cord from birth isn't cut, because it is. And your kid's success or failure doesn't define who you are. It defines your kid. That's who it defines. Um, and of course, with all the stuff we see on social media, the news now about the craziness going on in schools, you've been in the schools, I've been in the schools. A kid is acting out of their mind in school, cursing at the teacher, getting in the fight. What's the first thing we think about?
Their parents, their home life. Exactly. I had two situations. I'm substituting a few days a month. And so this past week I substituted twice in the same class. So I got to see these kids, a couple of times. And I've had two conversations individually with two students about this same thing, which is I'm seeing how you behave, and I know. I told them, I said, I have a sixth sense. It's called the Holy Spirit. I said, I know that whoever is responsible for you, your parents, your grandparents, whoever you live with, I know they don't expect you to act this way at school. I'm pretty sure of it. And one of them I even went as far to say, like, don't make me have to find out who your people are and then have to go tell them what I've been seeing at the school. So you need to go sit down and act like, I don't remember what words, but in these moments, they're always like affirming words, like positive affirmations of speaking to who they are and what their potential is and making sure I don't degrade them because they get enough of that. But my first thought as the sub, as they were misbehaving was, my gosh, who are your parents?
Who raised you? Like what are they paying attention? Are they involved? And I think that's a default for a lot of people because we tie the child's failure, their choices to their home training. But you and I know that you can give the best home training and your kid can go out into the world and make horrible decisions.
Because they are their own person. They have their own mind. Like, as we have to understand as parents that, like, you do what you can as they grow and develop, and you instill in them what you want. Train a child in the way they should go. It's a should. Now, what that child decides to do outside of your training is it's a conscious decision on their part, and it has nothing to do with you. That is, like you said earlier, freedom. Like, once you can internalize that and once you can get that, that is a freedom and a peace that I wish for every single parent on the planet.
Yeah. And I feel like as a teacher, it is helpful to have conversations with parents if you can get them into the school to talk, if you can give them a phone call so that you can get a pulse on what their character is like, what their standard is for their child, so that then you can understand, okay, I'm looking at the kid and I'm trying to figure out where all this is originating from. Because we get to the root of it, then we can cut that off, right? And so before we just assume that the child's behavior is directly tied to the parent, I would argue that there are some cases out there where there is a direct correlation. I worked in schools where I see the kids' behavior every day. We have a meeting, the parents come into the school, and I'm like, oh, yeah, this tracks. I can draw a straight line from here and make the connection. And then that, I think, transforms your mind as the teacher to maybe stop doing the finger pointing and the degrading and reminding them of all the failures that they made. And like you said, give that affirmation, reaffirm them. Hey, I know that you can do better than this. I know that this is not the right decision. So reaffirming what is positive about them in them, because sometimes we do have to counter what kids are experiencing day to day at home. And so then if we hop on the bus of thought, that train of thought that, oh, your behavior is just completely tied to your parents, your home training, I think we do a disservice to the kids.
Yeah, definitely. And so, in the article after the myths that they gave, they also gave a couple of strategies for the parents to use. So one of them was self-regulation and learning how to control your big or difficult feelings, specifically when they come up while you're in front of your kid. And so I like the question that the author posed: in these moments when you feel anxious, and those big feelings come up, ask yourself, how would I parent right now if I weren't afraid, or if I wasn't this anxious in this moment? And a lot of times that'll give just enough pause for you to actually calm down a little bit and possibly rethink your approach in the situation.
Yeah. And one of the other strategies, we'll link this article in the description box on the Apple Podcast and also on Spotify and in our YouTube comments as well. But the other one that the article talked about was connect with why you are enough as a parent. Making sure that we understand we can't give our children what we don't have. And we want to make sure that we understand we can't hide what we don't have either. So we have to figure it out eventually. And that comes through just diving in as a parent to get to know who you are as a person, and then strategizing how you can best help your kid. And it doesn't have to be always rescuing them from their choices, because then we're just perpetuating a cycle that will just continue. So definitely check out this article. It's originally posted in the Huffington Post, written by Rachel Simmons. Before You Let the Child Fail, read this. That's the title of the article. So we'll link it in the description box. Hopefully you walked away with some good either advice, strategies, or just feeling seen. Like, the things that we talked about today helped you feel like you're not alone on this train of parenting. You're not alone in the way that you are constantly reinventing yourself as a parent. And then as a teacher, for any of those listening, I think it's important for you to reflect on some of these myths and strategies as well, so that you aren't always stepping in to rescue your students either, making sure that they are feeling the weight of the choices that they make and making sure that they're growing as an individual as well. So that is our episode for today. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure you share this. Make sure you go back and listen to part 1. Give us a like, a thumbs up, download this and share it. Listen to it again. And we will see you all next Tuesday. Have a good one.
Bye.